Non-player characters often spend their existence totally alone. But for some, it's not just part of the programming, it's the narrative. I'm Falcon, and today on Game Ranks, the 10 loneliest NPCs in video games. Number 10 is Fuka Yamagishi from Persona 3, who is essentially a bullying victim who desperately needs somebody. She has a kind nature, but it seems like people just take advantage of it, and therefore it's very hard for her to develop any meaningful relationships. She doesn't get along with her parents, she doesn't get over a certain death very well, and just generally has an inferiority complex. And if there's anything that can make somebody lonely quicker than feeling inferior to everyone in the world, I don't know what it is. That is instant alienation from everyone, and sadly Fuka constantly feels it. Number 9 is Bodley from World of Warcraft. Now, if you head up to a balcony in the Blackrock Spire, and you happen to have the extra-dimensional ghost revealer, you'll find Bodley, who was killed back in the day when he was part of a mercenary company. He can't go anywhere, he's been sealed in this location, and nobody can see him or talk to him or anything like that unless they've got an extra-dimensional ghost revealer, and as you might guess from that name, it's not the most common item in the world. Bodley is a long-winded fellow who just is happy to talk to somebody, and that goes for while he's giving you quests and even if you return after the quests are done. If you actually end up doing that, he'll compliment you because you look great, and as they say, you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. Number 8 is also from World of Warcraft, Recall Nichi, an ex-socialite, a dead socialite, that you can only see if you've got the Eye of Divinity on, which, if you find Harris Pilton in the World's End Tavern, who is a vendor and a socialite, Recall Nichi kind of works as a bit of a satire on Nicole Richie's actual situation with Paris Hilton, or at least way back in the day. You see, Recall Nichi, like Nicole Richie, lived almost entirely in the shadow of Paris Hilton, or Harris Pilton, or whatever. Number 7 is the lonely old woman from Bloodborne. Essentially somebody who is cranky and maybe a little bit mad, like the traditional definition of mad, like not all there, mad as a hatter. She views the hunters as kind of a burden, and even at times the problem. But eventually she warms to you, and seems to think that you might be a son or daughter, and attempts to take care of you. Now, I'm not really sure when she seems creepier to me, when she's just a raving lunatic or a raving lunatic who likes you, but either way, this is somebody who doesn't deal with a lot of people, ever. Number 6 is Miko from Skyrim, which Miko is just a sad story. His owner, well, died, and Miko's been hanging around his shack ever since. Miko is kind of one of those loyal to a fault dogs. He takes care of himself, but, you know, looks sad as hell. Like, if you've seen any NPC that they've imbibed with an emotion in Skyrim, it's Miko and loneliness. They patched it so you could adopt Miko and try to give him a home and all that, which is great because it used to be if you let him go anywhere, he would just head back to the shack. Number 5 is Veronica Santiago from Fallout New Vegas. A Brotherhood of Steel procurement specialist, somebody who has to go out and find stuff like food, or at least was given that because, well, she's a bit of an outcast. You see, the Brotherhood of Steel is not very fond of same-sex relationships because they believe that, well, since there was a nuclear bomb, the only thing they should be doing is procreating. Now, besides being an outsider for that reason, you know, who she feels love for, her parents were killed in a battle defending some place that she didn't even remember where or why. Veronica sees issues with the Brotherhood of Steel, namely that they completely cling to old ways. They have something called a codex, and if it is written in the codex, that's that. If the codex says jump, you search for the part where it tells you how high to jump. And she sees a lot of the Brotherhood's practices as, well, stuff that's probably going to make them go extinct. And honestly, so does her mentor, but her mentor still follows the teachings. She's alienated everywhere because the Brotherhood is awful and everyone hates it, while everyone in the Brotherhood also doesn't really like her, despite the fact that it was her family and then her adopted family. Kinda sucks to be Veronica. Number 4 is Billy West from Red Dead Redemption. Now you'll see him out picking flowers for his wife Annabelle, which sounds very sweet and nice. But as it turns out, Annabelle isn't alive. That doesn't mean Annabelle isn't around. He's got her in a chair in his house, and either thinks she's alive or just really wishes she was alive to the point where he's willing to basically just live his life around a corpse. Now this seems particularly weird until you probably think of the fact that this old guy doesn't have a lot of people in his life and probably really misses his wife. I mean, it doesn't make it not weird, it just makes you understand it. Losing the person in your life that matters most is never going to make anyone react well, and my guess is that this is a very isolated individual who only had his wife, but sadly she's gone. Number 3 is Septimus Cygnus, who due to isolation as well as reading the Elder Scrolls has become kind of a crazy hermit. And when I say kind of, I'm saying that for a fact. He's actually a really crazy old hermit. He's written books that are literally just insane metaphors that make no sense. He tends to refer to himself in the third person, which is not the worst thing in the world, but it gets annoying. And generally this guy doesn't have a lot in common with anyone. This isn't a guy that spends time with people at all. And when he does talk to people, he tends to just, well, not really phrase his stuff in the most intriguing of ways. He's very rough around the edges, and I don't mean offensive, I mean just totally bizarre. Number 2 is Brandis from Fallout 4. Brandis was a member of a team that went out to find pre-war technology, which was just ravaged over time by various different enemies, from individual hostiles to groups. The guy basically managed to escape an attack, but unfortunately watched all of his friends die in various attacks previous to that one, and he finally hid alone in a bunker, essentially just barely making it by for 3 years. Completely alone in a bunker for 3 years. Oh, and he's totally paranoid. That's always a fun thing to try to convince him to go back to the Brotherhood of Steel, yeah. And finally, the old man at the beginning of the very first Legend of Zelda game, who's hanging around alone in a cave between 2 flames. You walk in and he tells you it's dangerous to go alone and to take this sword, which you do, and then walk out, never to see him again. That sword was the only other physical object in there. Fire is a chemical reaction that's ongoing, and other than the walls, that's the only thing he had. That's it. That's all. And Link doesn't even say thank you or anything like that. He's just like, yep, well, enjoy the cave. And the entire time you're out adventuring and defeating evil in the world, he's sitting there, alone. Sometimes the world is not fair. As a quick bonus, that person out sweeping the grass. That person who has so little to do, they are sweeping the grass. You ever encounter a really lonely NPC? They can be a character in a game or just some total rando. They just can't be the player character. Leave that in the comments, and if you like this video, please click like. If you're not subscribed, now would be a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week, and the best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. As always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at FalconTheHero, and we'll see you next time right here on Game Ranks.